around the world. BCG works with clients to tackle the most important challenges and explore the greatest opportunities, including the rapid proliferation of artificial intelligence and generative AI. With their deep industry and functional expertise, BCG is bringing together advanced tech knowledge and ambitious entrepreneurship to help organizations unlock innovation at scale.
It's the Red Nose Day Childhood Dream Stakes, where every donation to help end childhood poverty gives you the chance to win a cotton candy castle, crush a car in a monster truck, and even more childhood dreams. Donate now for a chance to win.
MassMutual is leading wealth management by offering financial advisors the best of both worlds, providing resources to run your business and freedom to run it your way, helping you make a name for yourself with our good name behind you. Learn more at massmutual.com/wealth.
Trying to understand Asia is like piecing together a giant jigsaw puzzle. 40 countries and more than 2,000 languages. Asia is home to some of the fastest growing economies, and it can be incredibly hard to cover this part of the world. So we're starting the Big Take Asia, a weekly news podcast from Bloomberg. I'm Juan Ha. I've been covering Asian news for more than a decade at Bloomberg. Listen to Big Take Asia every Wednesday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Coming up next on a Bloomberg Business Week, more with Randy Bachman, the icon founding member of BTO and the Guess Who. That's after this on Bloomberg Business Week.
Now, your company news headlines on Bloomberg Radio. It's 4:53 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Right now, taking care of business with chipmaker NVIDIA. Higher today, rallying 9.3%, holding above $1,037 on NVIDIA. Even as the market sold off, that bullish sales forecast showed that AI computing spending does remain strong. Mandeep Singh is a senior tech analyst with Bloomberg Intelligence.
It is a virtual monopoly. We talk about AMD and other competitors. They're nowhere close to, how quickly this company is shipping products and how they're able to raise prices. What really stands out here is the ASP increases that they continue to show from Ampere to, Hopper and now Blackwell. They're adding more kind of capabilities, networking and other kind of things, and they're charging more to the customer, and they're happily paying it.
Bloomberg's Mandeep Singh again. NVIDIA today up 9.3%. Other chip makers, though, declined. Super Microcomputer was down 3%. Advanced Micro Devices lower by 3.1%. Tough day for Boeing shares, down 7.5%. CFO Brian West says the embattled playmaker will continue to burn cash in the second quarter and in the full year as it grapples with a turnaround effort of its factories and faces a new challenge in the form of additional certification requests from China that have temporarily halted deliveries to the country. Again, Boeing today fell by 7.5%. James Gorman will step down as Morgan Stanley chairman at year-end, capping a nearly two-decade run of the firm in which he rescued it from the brink. Morgan Stanley shares today lower by 1.8%. Well, those are our top company stories at this hour. I'm Charlie Pelletin. This is Bloomberg. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Messer and Kim Stenbeck on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
All right, everybody, we're talking with Randy Bachman, founding member of Bachman Turner Overdrive, and the Guess Who, because he's got an auction coming up, Julian's Auctions Music Icon Sale. He's got over 200 or roughly 200 guitars in that auction, and that's happening May 29th and May 30th at the Hard Rock Cafe in New York City. Having said that, you need to share with our audience about the lost guitar. Tell us about that.
It's one guitar that will not be auctioned off.
No, I just got it back after it had been gone 47, 48 years.
Oh, my God.
It was stolen from a hotel in Toronto. I was doing a BTO album there. It vanished. There was no internet then, so I had to fax all the guitar stores. I ended up in a frenzy buying Gretsch guitars. I went through my midlife crisis buying Gretsch guitars. I amassed over 300, finally sold them to Fred Gretsch. It became the Gretsch Museum in Savannah, Georgia.
Wow. Unbelievable.
But this one that was stolen, I kept searching for, and we got a notice back a couple of years ago. Tal and I, my son, were doing Bachman Trainwreck every Friday night on YouTube because there were no gigs. and a guy thought I found your Gretsch guitar. It was in Tokyo with a guy named Takeshi. It was like the Brian Setzer of playing rockabilly on this big orange Gretsch.
Yes.
And my daughter-in-law is Japanese, so she set up a Zoom with him, translated everything. He offered the guitar back. I went and found his sister guitar from the same year, 2 digits off in the serial number, so I could trade him a light guitar. We couldn't go to Tokyo, but the Canadian ambassador said, I'll get you in as a diplomat. You don't have to do 2 weeks of isolation being COVID tested every day. Air Canada offered free tickets. So it's like everybody doing a good deed for this guitar. And we went there. They wouldn't let me meet Takeshi or see my guitar until I walked on stage on Canada Day, July the 1st, in the Canadian consulate. So the filming, this is being a film. They wanted to see my face when I saw this guitar. It's like if your childhood bike or your dog got run over by a truck, and then somebody later came and said, oh, your dog had puppies, and here's a puppy, and it's just like your dog. Skippy is back, right? So I'll get my guitar back.
Skippy was back.
They filmed it, and it's going to be a film coming out very soon.
Very cool.
It's being edited right now.
It's Netflix?
Can we say Netflix?
Maybe, if they bid high enough.
Okay.
All right. Well, will you come back when it's on?
I will. That'll be a whole different story. That's the guitar I've gotten out home. It was the #1 guitar with the Guess Who and BTO with all their hits and albums. And maybe I'll have a #1 again on Rotten Tomatoes or something when the film comes out. But my son and I got an album that's coming out. That's the soundtrack to the movie of The Lost Guitar. Wow. You never know.
You never know.
Might be my magic feather. Might be my Dumbo You Can Fly. Here's your magic guitar. Another hit song.
Do you have a favorite hit song of your own?
I think it might have to be Taking Care of Business. I've had many teachers come to me that teach handicapped kids, altruistic kids, very advanced kids, and to get all their attention in the morning, they always play Taking Care of Business. All these little kids who are attention deficit or whatever, and also guys going in Desert Storm in their tanks to battle, playing Taking Care of Business, or playing American Woman. In their tanks, they're going to fight. When the Canadian astronaut was in the air, he played Taking Care of Business. I gotta say that song, thanks to Elvis and me, is like, wow.
Gotta feel pretty cool
Very
about
cool.
this. Got 30, 40 seconds left here. What do you want people to know about the auction?
Well, there's guitars, some of them are on display at the Hard Rock.
Okay.
You can't afford a guitar, go down there with a camera, take a picture of the guitar. Some of them are going to sell for millions of dollars. The 59 Les Paul, they're all going, Mark Knopfler's went for 1.4 million pounds or something like that. This was a replica, a reissue.
Right.
Mine's a real one from 59.
Are you okay that you stopped playing violin and went this way?
Really? I used to get beat up with the violin. I put it under my arm every Saturday morning, and all the guys would beat me up. Here's the sissy going to his violin lesson. We're playing hockey. It's Winnipeg, right?
Not sissy. It's pretty amazing. Come back. You're welcome back.
I will, thanks. I will.
Good luck on the tour.
Thanks.
Yeah, stay safe.
Come back. Hang out with us again.
Yeah, I'd love hanging out with you guys. You're really happy.
Randy Bachman, who's founding member of Bachman Turner Overdrive. And the guest too, check out Julian's auction, as we said, May 29th and May 30th at the Hard Rock in New York City. That's going to do it for us. Have a good and safe evening, everybody. I'm Carol Master, along with Tim Stenevec. Check our podcast, but do not go anywhere because Balance of Power starts right now.
Live from the financial capital of the world, broadcasting across the globe, this is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. From Washington, D.C.
From Bloomberg's Washington, D.C. studios to our TV and radio audiences worldwide, welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Joe Matthew. President Biden rolls out the red carpet for Kenyan President Ruto as the official state visit continues today at the White House, reinforcing their alliance. In a joint news conference earlier, we'll look at the takeaways and we'll look ahead to tonight's state dinner with our political panel. Pressure escalating meantime in Gaza as the struggle continues to get humanitarian aid into the right hands. David Miliband from the International Rescue Committee joins us to talk solutions this hour. And the world watches China conducting military drills around Taiwan as a so-called punishment for swearing in its new president. Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, ranking member of the House China Select Committee, weighs in on what exactly this means for U.S.-China relations. Thank you for joining us on the Thursday edition of Balance of Power, live from Washington here on Bloomberg TV and radio. We begin at the White House and the state visit of Kenyan President Ruto, who held a joint news conference, as I mentioned, a short time ago with President Biden, in which they spoke about the strength of the partnership between the two countries. Here's President Biden from earlier in the day.
We're celebrating 60 years of a solid relationship between Kenya and the United States, built firmly on the foundation of shared values, which we cherish, of freedom, democracy, the rule of law, respect for human rights. And we're very proud of the relationship that we have built.
That's where we start from the Oval Office here to our table at Balance of Power with Bloomberg's Washington Bureau Chief Peggy Collins. It's good to see you, Peggy. Thank you for joining us. There's something festive about the day of a state visit and a state dinner in the air around the White House in Washington, but there was serious business to be had. The first visit of an African nation to get this type of treatment at the White House in 16 years, and the president did make news. President Biden designating Kenya a major non-NATO ally. Put this in perspective for us, the significance of this moment.
Well, I think it is significant, Joe, and they have done a lot of outreach to Africa over the past year. Some cabinet secretaries, Vice President Harris has visited, now, of course, the state dinner. I think there's a couple of takeaways here. One is that the administration really does see Africa as key to their foreign policy initiatives. There's a lot of economic growth potential and population growth potential in Africa forecast for the years and decades ahead. It's also a key counter to China. A lot of our policy has been around, in terms of foreign policy, and our geoeconomics have centered around the relationship between U.S. and China. And Africa is at a crossroads between both of those. So I think we're seeing the Biden administration recognize that economic growth potential in Africa, but also the ability to strengthen the ties that we have to nations there in order to shore up our supply chains and our economic growth as well.
Well, it's really interesting the way you frame that, because there were many audiences for that news conference today and for what we saw as their Oval Office meeting, which extended well beyond the allotted time. To your point, China was watching. Of course, African nations were watching, and so were our allies elsewhere around the world. There were other deliverables, $250 billion in new lending, new tech cooperation that would actually see money from the CHIPS Act going to an African nation for the first time. Was there enough to show for this visit when it came to the takeaways here versus the photo opportunity?
Well, it's so interesting that you brought up the CHIPS Act, because they did make an announcement about how we're going to try to put money into Africa around semiconductor chips, technology there to shore up supply chains. But so much of the conversation around chips has been around nearshoring them, bringing it back home to making them in the U.S. And this is really saying, hey, we can shore up our supply chains in places like Africa, again, to lessen our dependence on places like Taiwan, but also to counter China on this incredibly important technological area. So, and you mentioned debt, Joe. I think that's another big thing for developing nations, and certainly for Africa, where the U.S. is saying, hey, we need to provide more lending and make sure that poorer countries are not going so far in debt that they can't get themselves out of it.
Is the private sector the answer to that? The president gathered a bunch of executives from Fortune 500 companies and some familiar names yesterday. We had Alphabet there. We had private capital represented in the room, industrial companies. There was even an infrastructure deal with a Virginia company that was announced earlier today. Is that the answer to debt from Belt and Road, or is it government, U.S. government aid as well?
Well, I think a lot of people would say you need both, right? That the private and public partnership is really going to be the wave of the future for a lot of these big problems that need solutions. But I do think the private sector, oftentimes to lend to more risky countries or areas, they definitely need some type of government floor, for lack of a better word, to feel like the government may back them up and help them to take more risk. But other people will say the private sector should just step in more no matter what, because of the potential for growth.
Yeah, they'll be lining up for the big state dinner. I guess there's a tent on the South Lawn. You see the menu? Looks pretty great.
You know what? We could go over, Joe. Just see if we can get a last minute ticket.
You can get me in. I'm with you after this. I'm done at 6 o'clock. No ice cream on the menu. Fascinating for the Biden White House. Peggy Collins Thank you so much for your great reporting and leadership in the Washington Bureau. As we turn to Capitol Hill, the Senate failing to pass a bipartisan border bill for the second time this afternoon. Senator Chuck Schumer blasted Republicans afterwards.
We're here again. Just like 3 months ago, Senate Republicans rejected the strongest and most comprehensive bipartisan border security bill Congress has seen in a whole generation. It's a sad day for the Senate, a sad day for America.
Let's bring in Bloomberg's Gregory Cordy now. I know you're shocked this didn't pass. So what are we saying here? This is just a messaging bill all along?
Yeah, if you're looking at Senator Schumer there, he clearly knew this was a doomed exercise. But there is a purpose, though. There is a purpose. And look, this is the same bill that they brought up some months ago. What we saw in our Bloomberg News poll that we do with Morning Consult of swing state voters after they did this last time is that they did make some inroads in at least shifting some of the blame away from President Biden and Democrats in Congress on this immigration issue of these droves of people coming over the U.S.-Mexico border, and not diminishing the Democratic blame, but adding to the Republican blame and making it a bipartisan problem. Once they've used that trick once, it's hard to get it to work again, although I would not rule out Senator Schumer or perhaps someone else trying once again to highlight that it's really former President Trump and Republicans who are being the obstructionists here, despite the fact that this is the issue, or perhaps because this is the issue they want to run on in November.
Well, it's just it's the reason why people hate Washington in some cases. When you see someone like Jim Lankford, a serious lawmaker and a very conservative Republican from Oklahoma, who put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this compromise, tried to sell it to his colleagues and the American people, failed months ago when that happened. To come back now and vote against it and to talk about this, I think he described it as picking up weapons. It's not even real legislation anymore. How do you have the same person craft it? It's his baby and then divorce himself from it like that?
We talked about
Donald Trump.
We talked about this the first time. This is a bill that 6 months ago or a year ago, Republicans would have taken in a second. The only thing that's changed is the election year dynamics here, and this is an issue that Republicans clearly want to win on, giving President Biden a win on immigration. And let's not let President Biden off the hook too easy either. He has had a change of heart on this issue as well.
Sure.
And there's just a little bit of
punished for it.
Well, he's trying to use a little bit of election year jiu-jitsu to switch the impetus back on Republicans. It has worked to an extent. It probably won't get him completely off the hook.
I'd love to bring Peggy back in because we can't let Peggy Collins go away that easily. You're the bureau chief in Washington. You see big picture, 30,000-foot view here in Washington. This is messaging legislation for the rest of this Congress? Is that what we're in for as opposed to real lawmaking?
Well, I think there's such a close tie between the two legislative bodies in the sense that everything they say and everything they do, they're trying to message, but they also can't get a lot done, right? And the closer we get to the election, there's going to be less and less that they can get done because of all the partisan politics in it. So I think that's where a lot of the messaging comes in. They feel like they've got to message because they can't actually get a lot of legislative work done.
Understood. And even though there is some work to be done, the Farm Bill is one example. I don't know if we can spin back the comment from Joni Ernst the other day, but it's pretty interesting to think that something that was never a controversial moment could get to the point now where, again, it probably can't pass. The Republican from Iowa, in talking about her own agriculture state, but also the stakes here, had this to say about the Farm Bill on Bloomberg.
We are really struggling with the Farm Bill this year, and it is a $1.5 trillion price tag in the United States.